Hey everybody, my name is Chris Civil and I just wanted to share with you why I quit teaching. I was a teacher for 20 years, began in 2003 and worked in secondary education and I ended up leaving. And I just wanted to kind of explain the journey of what that looked like and why that was. So I used to love teaching, but I gave it 20 years and every single year it got harder. It got more difficult and unashamedly, it broke me. Um, I'd ended up getting burnt out on two occasions and it was the second one that I just thought I couldn't take it anymore. And although I'd loved the job and I'd had many positive experiences and made a huge difference um, to lots of people's lives, kind of as a class teacher, head of department, head of sixth form, I literally had nothing left in the tank. So just gonna kind of go through some of that journey and where it took me and the kind of why behind it because of that. So, like I say, I started in 2003 and I was working in a secondary in Newcastle and worked me up to head of department. I really enjoyed that. And although it was challenging at times, and you're always going to have those challenging students, so it was doable. But then because of various political decisions, that school ended up closing because of well, basically shutting it down because I said it wasn't getting results. But anyway, I had to know one for another day. So I ended up going to work in a Peru, pupil referral unit, and that was in my hometown of South Shields. And I probably went there. I had an opportunity to go somewhere else that would have probably been more aligned to what I was doing as head of department, but I chose that job for the wrong reasons. And I went to work in a Peru, and I thought, I've always got on really well with say students who struggled with behaviour, but this was like another level. This was like fucking being in Afghanistan. It was like being in a war zone every single day. Being constantly swore at, told to fuck off. You're a daft cunt. You're this, everything under the sun. The one that always jumps out, sticks in my mind, was actually getting told off a student. Why don't you go drink bleach and die and things like that, and I kind of say, oh, it's only words, things like that. But when you're getting told these things 10, 20, 30, 40 times a day, every single kind of weighs you down. And I think after about kind of 18 months or so, I was just completely burnt out. I was absolutely wrecked. I was drinking 4, 6 cans a night. I was going home, I was comfort eating. I was waking up during the night thinking about work, all these things I had to do, the naughty kids, it was horrible. And I ended up, got to the point where I was actually, remember, lying in bed one night and just thinking, hey, I just want to die here. I was kind of thinking about, what knife could I use to kill myself with downstairs, and that's another level stuff. So I ended up going off on the sick and took a great deal of time to kind of pull myself back. And, I was on his antidepressants and had some counselling, and which helped a little bit. But I had to leave that. And I would have said I took maybe 2, 3 years sabbatical. After that, I would say it took me at least a good couple of years to get back to feeling anything normal. But I remember when I was on the sick, I just went to Morrison's to do some shopping, and even just trying to put the stuff in the bag and pay, that was a huge. I was shaking and I couldn't get my card out, my wallet, and just felt like my brain was on fire all the time. And it's the worst part of my life. And I took the time away to kind of work on me, and I thought I'd never gonna go back to is the education again. and I kind of didn't have a clear plan of what to do. And I see I took a couple of years out, and then I ended up going doing some supply, some extra money, and I didn't mind the supply. It was okay, and I'd done some short term and day to day, and it was going okay, and I was feeling like back to my normal self a little bit, and I was looking for something a little bit more permanent. This is why I got the job at my last school. That was a 13, kind of 18, that age range. And I went in, so I was only doing 2 days a week. And I was kind of going in firefighting because there'd been some people in the business department that did a pretty poor job. So I went in there. It was a great team. Nick, who was head of department, was exactly like me as well. You know, good personality, similar background, same area, and it was brilliant. You know, it was a laugh. We're getting on really well with students, and I went 3 days a week. And I think I was doing 4 days a week, and it was brilliant. Absolutely loved it. Probably the best experience of my whole teaching career. Absolutely amazing. Unfortunately, Nick chose to leave. I then went to head of department, and then that's kind of when things started to change a little bit. And the schools loved it, amazing. I was doing 5 days a week then, and then I also took on the role of head of sixth form as well. So I was running both of those responsibilities. That was tough, but it was enjoyable. I would say I spent most of my time smiling, enjoying myself, you know, having a bit of a laugh with the kids. It was really, really enjoyable. But then things started to change. The whole kind of ethos was changing a bit, and there was just more pressure because obviously you've got kind of Ofsted pressures. You've got to be getting the grades. The type of students change as well. It was changing from kids who really wanted to be there and they're really happy to be there and they loved the learning, they loved the subjects. They started to change students who didn't really want to be there. The kind of apathy of it, not really bothered. And it started to go more from a bit of a loose college ethos environment. It went more schooly. Some people kind of come into the school at management level, kind of changed that. I think it really lost some of its good points. But anyway, so yeah, it just come more like school, and all the things that made it stand out differently just started to change. The ethos, the whole emphasis of it changed. And for me, that's when things started to go downhill. The pressure was ramped up, the apathy from the students, some of the leadership team weren't really that great, and then we had COVID, so you were off. I was going back with a fresh perspective. Most people had a fresh perspective after COVID, and I just thought, is this really what I want to be doing anymore? And when we did get back, the students had a whole different outlook. They just weren't bothered at all. They were just hoping that was going to go down to teacher grading again. That'd be right. They weren't putting the work in. And also, obviously, as I'm sure most people are aware of in teaching, what had changed, less money. When budgets are being cut, there's less money, which means less people in the building, which means more people have got to cover more responsibilities. So there's more to do. You've got less free time, more pressure to get the results, constant data entry, judging the data. This one should be getting this one should be getting that. Why isn't this? And kind of change that. Everything's your fault. And trying to get anything done for me in terms of making change, I found really difficult because it just was really difficult to do that. It's just the whole kind of ethos of certain things weren't up at the top of the list. And over time, because I was not happy there, you get more to do, more pressure, less enjoyment. Students would throw you under the bus, kind of any day of the week, they didn't tell me this, they didn't do that, things that, when actually you had taught them that. And so the whole apathy just really started to break me. And I felt like I was being gaslit because I was going in, doing my best every single day. The students didn't care. But when anything went wrong, it was your fault. They didn't do this for me. They didn't tell me that for me. And I remember I had one meet with a student, a parent, and this student just completely, you know, I was doing my best to make sure that he'd get the best grades. As, oh, you don't like me, you don't this, you don't that, you don't that. And I was really upset about that coming away from it. I was so angry, but I was just upset about the fact that I'd taught this student for several years. We've gone really, really well, but actually because how very dare me pick him up for not doing any work in the lessons, then that obviously I was like picking on him and stuff, which obviously I wasn't. That's just one of the things. But yeah, all that constant pressure, deadlines to meet, started to take its toll, and I was just really deeply unhappy. School changed so much. It went from being a happy place to work just a real miserable place to work, and it was just constant pressure. And for me, I would never been the greatest teacher in the world, but what my superpower was actually getting results, getting on with students, having really positive relationships, because I had the positive relationships to do the work, get the results. And I just found that it became a lot harder. I started to have less patience because they weren't interested, and because they weren't interested, that would get me frustrated as well. And just going into school every single day when people just generally didn't give a fuck just started to just chip away with me, and my confidence started to go. Things that, always used to have me door open, anyone could come in any time, that just started to be kind of looking, people going past, people popping their head in, what are they doing that for? All this type of stuff. And what started to suffer, probably first of all, was me lesson observation, like learning walks and stuff. I had people kind of coming in, and I've never been the type who would say, oh, I'm being observed, I'll spend 3-4 hours planning a lesson and just putting on a performance to show just can't be. I've never done that, and I wasn't going to start there either. I'd done what I'd done, and if it wasn't good enough, tough shit, basically. And that's not from an arrogant point of view. What they seen was what I'd done throughout the year. I wouldn't just put on a performance and try to kind of, cheat. I just, done what it was. And it was a few kind of different things, and I'd had some feedback, I could improve this, improve that, and I had a couple of little niggly little kind of observations, and, feedback wasn't great, and then there was like a bit of a gap between some other feedbacks, and then one of the I think it was assistant principal at the time kind of come in, done a lesson observation on us, and I don't think I'd heard anything for like 4 weeks, 6 weeks, and that was the last day of term, Friday, school training day, before breaking up for Easter, and I was sat in this training, and I've got to say it was absolutely bollocks, like, but I tried my best to kind of get engaged into us. And she was like, oh, Chris, can I come and have a quick word and give you some feedback? And bear in mind, this was like, I think it was like 20 minutes before we broke up at 12 o'clock for 2 weeks, 2 weeks Easter. And basically it was like, I was completely, can't even think of the phrase, I was just completely caught like a rabbit in the headlights, and it was like started going through how not good it was. Basically, I can't even remember a lot of the terminology. I was completely in shock. It was just like I haven't heard nothing for that long. It must have been okay, but then I was like, oh, well, this wasn't it, this one, and then the kind of words like, oh, support plan. And when you hear those words, you just think, fucking hell, what's happening? Yeah, I'd always been the one who'd been called in to support people who were going to go on an informal support plan. I'd always been the one who had to help those people, the people they look to. And then there's me. This person's been teaching like 20 years or whatever. I'm getting to, oh, you're going to go on an informal support plan. And I was like, I literally fucking didn't have the words. I was like, so what's this? So this one's going to come in and say you're teaching and after Easter and this is, and I'm thinking, what the actual fuck? And I think what kind of made it worse as well, a little bit at the time, was these people were telling me this, so these people were going to come in. I didn't even rate them as teachers anyway. I thought they were absolutely fucking useless. But that's by the by. That was just my personal opinion. So I kind of come out of this kind of ambush, I would say is a more appropriate term. It was completely unprofessional. This should have been done before. When bearing in mind any feedback that you're supposed to get from observational learning walk should be done within 24 hours. This was like 4, 5, 6 weeks afterwards to get ambushed on the kind of last day of term. I think that was absolute terrible. Really, really poor show by that person. But anyway, kind of come out there and I walk along the corridor and there's people still doing the training. And my head was just like, what the fuck? I could have started crying there and then. Actually, I was completely taken back. So I got back to my office and I was like, well, right, what do I do? I sat down, I could feel myself welling up and I had a little drink of water and I didn't have anyone to talk to. There was no one about. And I thought, well, do I go and speak to my line manager just to maybe have a bit of a chat? And she wasn't there and this sort of stuff. And I was completely knocked for 6. So I ended there, I just grabbed my bag and I left. And I remember driving home in the car and there was floods of tears coming down my face. And I'd just completely been, ambushed. And there was nothing to tell me this was coming. And I phoned my partner and I was in tears and I was telling her. I phoned my parents, I was telling them, I was really upset. And I just, on the drive home, it was about 45 minutes, I just kind of got myself back into a half normal state of mind and got home and I thought about it a bit and I was like, right, okay, yeah, this is an opportunity, sort your teaching out, Chris. Let's get this. And I kind of even emailed back, blah, 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 right. Thanks. I was thanking them for the feedback. How fucked up's that? How messed up's that? And it's an email like thanking them. And it was like, okay, when I come back, I'm going to be ready to improve and, I'm going to work my hardest to make the teaching better and full stop, sent. And then I spent whole of the Easter thinking about that. It was like completely ruined Easter. And I was just absolutely felt flat as a pancake. I felt like absolute shit. And I spent a lot of time thinking about it. And right, I'm going to be going back. And it wasn't until maybe that second week when I really started to question myself. And I was thinking, well, hang on. Why is this? And I started to look at some of the reasons. Why is this? How have I went from, being the teacher everyone goes to or looks to for help and support, have I gone to be this teacher who's, potentially going to go on an informal support plan, or is going to go on an informal support plan? And we know for most cases, when you get on a support plan, there's only one way, and that's like bye-bye. You're going to be, leaving. And I certainly didn't want that to happen. And it wasn't until the last 2 or 3 days when I'd just spent a lot of time reflecting that I actually realised it kind of hit us. I was like, you burn out again. The reason why my teaching went down the pan, the reason why things went, I was completely wrecked. Wasn't looking after myself, wasn't looking after my well-being. It was literally just eat, teach, sleep, repeat. And when you're going into a job that you're not enjoying, you're working in a school that used to be brilliant, but now isn't a great place to work. You're not enjoying all these things with chipping away. My confidence was in the gutter. And with the apathy, all these things from the students just was a perfect storm. And even, the day before, probably even on the morning of going back, I was intending going back and it wasn't in the morning. I thought, you can't, what's the point? It's just going to be the same. You need to rest, recharge and get yourself fit again. So I ended up going on the sick from where, it was initially only phoned up like a day or two, but it wasn't until I just spent that time reflecting, and I spoke to my GP, and he said, yeah, it looks like you're suffering from work-related stress, anxiety, potentially burnout. And it wasn't until those weeks and months kind of after making that decision that it really, the penny dropped, that I was burnt out, and all these things that weren't working at school, they were just symptoms of the bigger problem of burnout. And kind of cut a long story short, I ended up not going back there. And I just thought, I can't do this again, because I knew at the back of my mind I'd been burnt out back in like 2015, 16. I thought, I cannot let this job career break me again, because I knew how long it took us to get back. So I made the decision to leave education. It wasn't an easy one, but I knew I needed to do it. I don't think I was as badly burnt out as I was the first time, but I was still burnt out. And I knew if I go back into that environment without the schools, without the tools, the skills that I know now, I would have ended up on an official support plan. I would have ended up probably getting booted out at some point or leaving, because I didn't know any better. And I was, at the time, I felt quite angry. Didn't really make that known at the time, but I was really angry and frustrated at the time. And I was like, what's going on? How kind of dare they? I've been a really good teacher. And it wasn't until, like I say, after that, then I'm pretty cool at now, it just happens, just a chapter of my life, with nothing personal. But burnout, wouldn't say destroyed it as a teacher, probably a bit too much, but it certainly affected me and kind of brought the early end of my career. And this is why, when I spent the time, where do you go? What do you do? Certainly wasn't going to be going doing supply work and education again. And I even deliberately said I'm not having anything to do with schools or teachers again. This is when I retrained as a therapist, coach, because I wanted to help people. Most teachers have got that helping thing. And even when people do leave, you always go into something that's where you're helping somebody else in different types of careers and status. And that's why I did it. And I really fought with it for about at least 12 to 18 months. But then you kind of come full circle. I know what I know, and my skills, I understand what teachers are thinking, because I've been there. I've done that. So the kind of irony is, I help people help teachers who are stressed, burnt out, kind of overwhelmed, so they don't get to the stage we got to, and they had to leave. And I've had some real successes. It's amazing. I love my job. I love seeing people coming in, teachers coming in, and they're so down, they've got no confidence in their body language, and within a few weeks they're smiling. This look so much lighter, and it's just making a few changes can really make a big difference. And it's so powerful. So I hope I was watching this video, you kind of took something from it. If you're a teacher or you left teaching, I hope, you've kind of took something from it. But I just wanted to kind of get it off my chest, to share it, and hopefully that you've took something from it as well. Have a great day.